The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, let's do this. Happy Monday. It's Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Off and rolling to kick off the week. Super Bowl week. I know none of our teams are in it, but there's still plenty to talk about when it comes to the Super Bowl, and we'll do that this week. But a lot to dive into coming out of the weekend. Excited to be with each and every one of you. Again, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Of course, we got our guy, Casey McAllister, holding it down in the producer chair. Guys, good morning. Casey, we'll start with you. How was your weekend? Anything fun going on? What'd you do?
Yeah, I just kind of hung out with the wife. It is her birthday weekend. Today is her actual birthday. So we just hung out with her family, hung out the house. We watched some Severance. I'm almost caught up now, and that's a great show. What else did I do this weekend? Watched a little UC basketball. Quickly turned that off. Let me think. Watched some highlights of the Pro Bowl. That's fun. Lots of great clips from Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
They had highlights of the Pro Bowl?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone knew it was on TV.
I certainly didn't.
I didn't watch it on TV. I just watched the highlights on Twitter. And then, let me think. That was basically it. That was pretty much my weekend. It was a pretty decent weekend, though. What about you guys?
Fair enough. Jacob, by the way, the weather was so cold in Ohio at 40, 50 degrees that Jacob just had to get out and head to Florida. You picked the warmest weekend in January, February to head out to go hang out in Florida, my man.
Yeah, battle through all that snow and negative and everything. It finally hits 40, 50, and, I go down to Florida. But, yeah, it was also the warmest weekend down there in a while, so it worked out well. It was fun to get out of Cincinnati, even though it was a little warmer, change of scenery. Yeah, it was definitely nice.
Elliot, I saved you for last mainly because I think I didn't know how their weekends went. I had an idea of how your weekend went, especially after I knew you went to the game yesterday. Probably not the best weekend. How are you feeling after that UC game yesterday?
Yeah, I felt better. I knew when I bought the tickets. I bought the tickets last week, and I told my dad, I'm like, we're gonna go, but it's gonna be terrible, and nobody's gonna have any fun, and the team is terrible. And the fans are going to boo, and all my predictions came true. The only thing you can do when you watch the Bearcats is bet on their opponent. That's all you can do, and it's the only way to have some sort of fun while you watch this misery, because it is terrible. I've never felt an arena so dead, and that's what it was yesterday. It was dead. Like last year, they fought. Like there was energy. They fought. The games were fun to go to. It was they seemed like they were always competitive. These games aren't close. I mean, they're getting blown out every single game. So yeah, it's about as bad as you can. It's about as bad as you can be.
Well, it's to the point now where former greats of the Bearcat program are speaking out, and we'll get to that more coming up later on in the show. And a lot of what they're screaming, these former players are. I mean, I think as fans. You don't feel good that former players are as miserable as you, but at least you know that you're not the only one that's experiencing this and that there's people calling for a change. And we'll get to that coming up in a bit. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl here in a bit. We have some Reds. We have Bengals. We have all that stuff covered for you here today. But let's send it to Elliot for Elliot's headlines as we kick off the week.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
Doesn't feel right.
College basketball, I only have one. I mean, if you want to go look at the scores from Saturday, you can go do that. College basketball, West Virginia. They beat UC yesterday 63-50. The Cats have now lost 8 of their last 10. Seamoss, Jizzle, Aziz, they went a combined 2 for 19 from the floor. 2 for 19. Rayvon Griffith was the only player yesterday that showed any sort of heart. He scored 7 points off the bench.
He's played a lot this year, right?
No. He doesn't play. Yesterday was the first time he's played, which makes you wonder why hasn't he played? Because he was the only player that was worth a damn yesterday. Day led scorers with 10 points for the Bearcats. He was 4 for 14 from the floor. I did send Casey a clip. I don't know when we want to use that clip. If you want to do it now, if you want to do it later, I don't know. But Wes in his postgame, it was probably the most blunt he's been as a Bearcats head coach in 4 years of being here in Cincinnati. It wasn't good. This is the type of press conference you hear from Mick Cronin, after a soul-crushing 48-46 loss. But this was Wes yesterday after losing to West Virginia by 13 points as a 6-point favorite at home, and it's been a disaster.
I'm very disappointed and disgusted with the way we're playing. It doesn't. At the end of the day, I'm in charge here. I'm the leader of our program, and it falls on me. And if I'm somebody that supports this program, I'd be frustrated. I'd be pissed at what I was watching. You should be. I am too. Pissed. And I take full responsibility. It's on me. And we got a lot of basketball left. We need to figure out a way to play a style and a level of basketball that makes people proud about the way that we wear the jersey. And right now we're not doing that. And, again, that falls on me. And there's nothing I could say that hurts more to say, but it's the truth.
Bearcats had 14 turnovers, 17 made field goals. There was a point in the game, I think it was with 5 minutes left. West Virginia had more steals than the Bearcats had made field goals. So that's where we are. They take on UCF on Wednesday. We'll see everybody there. NBA news.
Oh, biggest college basketball headline of the weekend. Coach Cal went back to Rupp. Kentucky by 10.
I saw that one, but I bet on Kentucky, and I didn't even want to mention it. So good. Listen, good for Cal. I will say this, that I think that that was the biggest revenge game maybe of all time, and the fact that he was able to win that speaks volumes.
Was it his biggest win in Rupp ever?
Maybe, yeah. I think it probably was.
I think it might have been.
Probably was. NBA news. The Cavaliers, they set records for most points in their first quarter with 50, most points in a half with 91 against the Mavericks yesterday. They win 144-101. The Lakers, in their blockbuster trade, received Luka Dončić, Maxi Kleber, Markieff Morris. Mavericks receive Anthony Davis, Max Christie, a 2029 first-round pick, and somehow the Jazz were involved in this trade.
The Jalen Hood-Schifino trade.
It's the Jalen Hood-Schifino trade. The Jalen Hood-Schifino trade. A 2025 Clippers second, a 2025 Mavericks second. It was the trade that set the world on fire. I think it was the biggest trade maybe in NBA history.
Certainly the most surprising.
I still don't fully understand it. The Mavericks GM came out and spoke yesterday, and it looked like Jason Kidd was there against his will.
Yeah.
He kept saying over and over how Jason Kidd and I we were together on this, even though Jason Kidd had no idea the trade was happening.
Jason Kidd looked like the 1,000-yard stare meme the entire press conference. Just a war veteran that's seen it all. I mean, how do you think that feels to wake up on Sunday morning? You never in a million years even think that they're going to trade Luka Dončić.
No.
I mean, if we listed untouchable players last week, he's either 1 or 2 probably on that list. And then you wake up Sunday morning and he's been shipped off overnight and you barely even get a return for him. That's crazy.
It's truly unfathomable. I don't think there's been a move like this ever. So good for the Lakers, I guess. I don't know. The GM yesterday saying, in 10 years they'll probably bury us for this, or we'll bury ourselves this year. It's like, what are you doing? If you know everybody's going to hate you for it, why do it?
Went through the list of everyone he ran it by, and every single person laughed at him. And he just thought he was, the funniest guy in the world and not making the worst move of all time.
I mean, it's we'll get more into it. But
Fun fact about their GM, he is the guy that worked for Nike when they were pitching Steph Curry. He's the one that botched the Steph Curry Nike presentation that led to Steph Curry signing with Under Armour. He used Kevin Durant's slideshow with Kevin Durant's name on it, and Steph didn't like that and ended up going with Under Armour.
That's hilarious.
The second worst move of his life.
And they didn't just call it. They also messed that up too, guys, because they kept calling him Seth Curry.
Yeah.
They kept calling him his brother. Like, it's one thing if you're pitching Seth and you keep accidentally calling him Steph, but when you're disrespecting Steph, calling him Seth, I mean, that's you were not trying to really win that presentation. Let's just be real.
Another trade was made. The Spurs, they get De'Aaron Fox and Jordan McLaughlin. Kings, they get Zach LaVine and Cisco. Never heard of the guy. 3 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks. Bulls get Zach Collins, Trey Jones, Kevin Huerter, and their own 2025 pick. So another blockbuster trade immediately following. The trade deadline is not until Thursday, and we've had some of the best players in the NBA get shipped around the league. So
the Bulls couldn't find someone to give them picks for Zach LaVine because his contract is so big. And
Yeah.
did you notice the pick that they got for him?
they got their own pick.
Their own pick. So they're just going to tank this year, but now it finally will be of benefit to them.
Unbelievable. In Major League Baseball news, Jack Flaherty, 2-year, $35 million deal to return to the Tigers.
Welcome home.
Welcome home. Those are your headlines.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Other news from over the weekend. How about this one? Eric Bieniemy. I mean, he's like a cat. He always lands on his feet no matter what, right? Eric Bieniemy back in the NFL. And this time he's going to be, of course, a part of the Bears staff. I thought that was interesting as well. I mean, Eric Bieniemy just keeps popping up everywhere. But Eric Bieniemy back in the NFL, part of the staff, of course, with Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears.
Ben Johnson's building a hell of a staff. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're going to be a first-time head coach, get guys that have been there and done it before. I think he's doing a really good job, getting the feet off the ground there. But I don't know how much $13 million for a rookie head coach makes a lot of sense. In today's NFL, we've seen these guys flame out before. So we'll see how it goes.
Ohio State offensive coordinator Chip Kelly is Ohio State offensive coordinator no more. Chip Kelly heading back to the NFL. He is going to join another staff that I actually think is pretty dang good. I mean, say what you – I don't think the Raiders are going to be very good just because I think they're in one of the toughest divisions in football right now. But I love what Pete Carroll is doing with that staff. He pulls Chip Kelly as the OC of Ohio State and is now making $6.3 million with the Raiders to be their OC. That's quite a payday. Chip Kelly making more than DeMeco Ryans and quite a few head coaches in the NFL. I don't think it's that difficult to understand why Chip Kelly left college to head to the NFL at this point.
More than Zach to be an OC. So, yeah, you get 3 times as much money as you were making at Ohio State to be the OC of the Raiders instead of coming back to Columbus. He had said that he was planning on coming back to Columbus, but this reminds me a lot of the Liam Cohen situation. When someone offers you 3 times what you're getting paid at the other place, makes the decision pretty easy for you. I'm on the exact opposite side of this one as I was with the defensive coordinator opening for Ohio State. I see a lot of people saying they got to take big swings, and that's where I stood with the defensive coordinator position. I think this decision's made for you. I think it's incredibly easy. I think it's Brian Hartline, and it would probably be done pretty quickly. I don't know if Ryan Day will let him call plays, but I think that's going to be your OC at Ohio State.
I think it has to be Brian Hartline only because
You'll lose him.
Yes, we're going to lose him. You keep paying him more and more money to keep him from going elsewhere. And I know what he brings to the table. A lot of the wide receivers that are there because of him. I still think a lot of wide receivers are there because of the offense of which they go play in. Brian Hartline gets a lot of credit for that, no doubt. However, at some point, you can't just keep looking at Brian Hartline and saying he's our offensive coordinator, but doesn't have offensive coordinator responsibilities. He did OC alongside Chip Kelly, one of the best offensive minds in football, NFL, college, what have you. At some point, you do got to give him the reins and say, are you an offensive coordinator? Are you capable of calling plays? What is your ceiling? Because I think we're past the honeymoon stage with Brian Hartline where it's just this great recruiter. He has to bring something more to the table, and I think that if he could become a great play caller, the sky's the limit for Brian Hartline. I think we're not talking about him being a head coach at some MAC school or American Conference school. I think he could pick any job he wants if that's going to be the case. But look out for that. I agree with you. I think they have to swing big for DC. I think the answer and solution is pretty simple. Brian Hartline, I'll roll with that. More
Chip
Ohio
Kelly
State
obviously worked out great for Ohio State, won a championship, but he wasn't even my top choice last year, a guy that's already circulating a little bit with Ohio State, the guy I wanted last year for the role, Jason Candle, Toledo's head coach, one of the best young offensive minds in the sport. If they bring him in for an interview again, he got a big raise at Toledo to avoid losing him to Ohio State. Maybe Ohio State goes higher and brings him in this year, so that's just another name to watch.
Yeah, Ohio State also another position coach that they'll have to look to replace is offensive line coach Justin Fry. He's expected or did take the Arizona Cardinals offensive line job, according to On3 from over the weekend.
Yeah, if you would have told me this preseason, I would have been stoked. I wanted to fire Justin Fry before the season. I thought he did a terrible job recruiting the Ohio State O-line and really developing these guys. But with the injuries to Seth McLaughlin and Josh Simmons this year, first-round tackle and the best center in college football, to reshuffle that and go win a championship and have your O-line be a strength, not just something you're trying to patch together to make it work, is as big of a vote of confidence as you can find. So good for him to go work with some Buckeye O-linemen down in Arizona. Paris Johnson, top 10 pick a couple years ago, Cincinnati kid. So should be a good landing spot for him. Definitely more of an NFL coach than a college coach anyway.
Another note out of college football, tampering continues to be a problem for poor old Nebraska and Matt Rule, apparently. I mean, they are the most must-watch program in college football, apparently. I mean, poor Matt Rule. I don't know if you saw this, guys, but he comes out and says, Matt Rule is considering canceling their spring game due to tampering. Now, his reason is because, we're one of the more televised spring games, and I dealt with a lot of people offering our players a lot of opportunities after that. The word tampering doesn't exist anymore. It's just absolute free, open, common market. I don't necessarily want to open up to the outside world. Let's be clear. The spring game is not this only window and opportunity for the rest of the world to see what you have. I find this to be very strange. I think it's dramatic. I think it's over the top. We're going to cancel the spring game because people around the world are going to try and take our players after they see how great we are in our spring game. I think that's ridiculous.
Spring games are fun. I don't know why people would take away spring games, especially in Nebraska. They sell it out every year. They pack that stadium every single year for the spring game. Why would you take that away from fans because you think you're bigger than you are? Nebraska's not losing anyone to big-time schools because of the spring game. They're losing people to big-time schools because that's how college football works now.
Yeah.
And last thing, this one out of the world of the National Football League, of course, the NFL will reportedly, and this is according to Sports Illustrated, by the way, the NFL will reportedly consider measuring first downs electronically during the upcoming 2025 NFL season. So the NFL is taking steps towards, appeasing fans who are upset with the officiating in games. This could be one of those to check off a box to appease fans. What do you guys think? Electronically monitoring, measuring first downs during the upcoming season.
Welcome to the 21st century. Thank you very much, NFL, for finally getting this started.
I think appeasing fans is a funny way to say continuing to change rules to help Josh Allen.
Sure.
What is this, the fifth rule they've changed because Josh Allen couldn't beat Patrick Mahomes?
That's true.
You got the ball back with 3 minutes left down less than a touchdown. Go win the game. I don't think we need to keep changing rules for Josh Allen. If you want to measure the ball with a chip, measure the ball with a chip because it's better. Don't do it just because the Bills lost to the Chiefs. Like you changed the overtime rules. It wasn't, enough when Pat threw an interception against Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow got a stop, went down and scored. Defense got a stop, went down and scored. You can do that, and then they change the rules because Josh Allen doesn't touch the football. Then Josh Allen doesn't get a first down. They change the rules here too. So what's next? Just keep changing the rules?
By the way, they could have always done this. The NFL operates like Apple. They're not. They don't want to make all these changes to make officiating better. They're just gradually gonna upgrade a couple things. It's like Apple, like the new iPhone. We're going to change the shape of the icons on your phone and charge you 3 times the price as the previous iPhone, but there's really no new functionalities whatsoever. That's what the NFL does. We're not going to just make all these changes to appease everyone all at once. We're just gradually going to improve some features. It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, it does seem every time the Bills get knocked out of the playoffs, there's something, especially against the Chiefs, the NFL is always looking to change something to keep that from happening again the next year. Who knows? But all right, speaking of the NFL, the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. We're going to pretend to be Joe Burrow when we come back. We're all going to be Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is sitting back, like all of us, getting set to watch the Super Bowl this upcoming weekend. But we're Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has to pull and cheer for a team this upcoming weekend. He has to pull and cheer for a quarterback this upcoming weekend. Who should that team be? Who do you think that team is that Joe Burrow is truly pulling for this upcoming weekend? We'll discuss when we come back. More Off the Bench next. Patrick Mahomes against Jalen Hurts, the Chiefs against the Eagles, a rematch coming up this weekend in the Super Bowl. And if you're Joe Burrow sitting at home, unfortunately not in the Super Bowl for Bengals fans this upcoming weekend, he's sitting at home watching it like we are. Deep down, who should Joe Burrow be pulling for? Obviously, you have the rivalry with the Kansas City Chiefs. You don't like Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's the face of the NFL. But Joe Burrow, many believe, is as good, if not better, talent-wise. But again, just with the limitations he has around him due to the front office and everything, just doesn't have that opportunity to do what we see Patrick Mahomes doing. So it pains Joe Burrow to watch what Patrick Mahomes is doing, just continuing to pile up Super Bowl appearance after Super Bowl appearance, Super Bowl championship after Super Bowl championship. He has the MVPs to go with it. There's a lot that just keeps being added to the trophy case for Patrick Mahomes. And then you have Jalen Hurts, who, like Joe Burrow, has been to a Super Bowl, but now Jalen Hurts has punched his ticket to a second Super Bowl, and a chance to knock off Patrick Mahomes in this Super Bowl would be huge for the legacy of Jalen Hurts, of course. Joe Burrow sitting back and having to watch both of these quarterbacks, watch both of these teams. It's painful to watch any of these teams win, but which one do you think Joe Burrow is pulling for this weekend? As I said, Patrick Mahomes, that legacy, he's tired of watching that legacy grow. Joe Burrow, every time Patrick Mahomes gets to another Super Bowl or wins one, the gap between him and Burrow gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You look at the QBs that everyone puts up at the top of the NFL. You have your Patrick Mahomes, you have your Josh Allen, obviously Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow's right up there. I'm not willing to put Jalen Hurts in that category, but to his credit, he is very successful. This is his second Super Bowl. All he does is win. And I think the fact that when you look at what he has done, being drafted in the same class as Joe Burrow, I do think that that plays a role in who Joe Burrow would go for in this. I'm not saying that Joe Burrow can never accomplish what Patrick Mahomes has accomplished to this point, but that gap is pretty wide. It would take a lot of time for Joe Burrow to have a resume similar to Patrick Mahomes. What you don't want, and I think if you twist this as well and say, especially in the MVP discussion, who does Joe Burrow want to win the MVP if it can't be him? I don't think he wants it to be Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson already has 2. What's 3 going to hurt at this point? Let Lamar Jackson win 3. All right. What you don't want is Patrick Mahomes to have the legacy he does. You don't want, Lamar Jackson already has 2 MVPs. You can't get any better than that outside of him matching it with playoff success. Josh Allen's a great regular season quarterback, puts up good numbers in the playoffs, just can't seem to win in the playoffs. And then Jalen Hurts, who we don't put in that category, but if he wins a Super Bowl, that's damning for Joe Burrow, who was drafted in that same class. You don't want Josh Allen to add an MVP trophy to his case as well. So I do believe if you're Joe Burrow, you want Patrick Mahomes to win. You want the Chiefs to win. If Patrick Mahomes wins another Super Bowl, that's just what he does. No one's going to look at Joe Burrow any different if that happens. But if Jalen Hurts, who was drafted in the same draft as Joe Burrow, back to a second Super Bowl already, just continues to win and then knocks off Patrick Mahomes in the process to win this Super Bowl, no one's going to view Joe Burrow as less than Jalen Hurts. But at the same time, from Joe Burrow's competitive drive, I have a hard time believing that he would be more sick with Patrick Mahomes winning another one over Jalen Hurts being another quarterback added to the list of getting something that Joe Burrow doesn't have. I think if you're Joe Burrow, I think you're pulling for Patrick Mahomes this weekend, as wild as that sounds.
I said this all through the AFC playoffs. I would rather the Chiefs win the Super Bowl than the Ravens or the Bills throughout the whole AFC playoffs. I think being the team that beat the Chiefs and they haven't lost a playoff game since the Bengals beat them, I think that means something to Bengals fans. I don't know how much it means outside of Cincinnati, but it's certainly a feather in our cap to be the last team that beat them, and to have another quarterback win a Super Bowl before Joe, that's not something I want. I'd like Joe Burrow to be next, and if that's in 5 years and Mahomes has 8, I think that's something I would prefer rather than a lot of guys to have one when Burrow inevitably lifts his. So I don't know where Joe's rooting. I think that it would make sense for a lot of people involved in Joe's legacy or anyone in that camp would be rooting for Mahomes. I think that's, he's cemented as number 1 of this era. I don't think there's anyone that's going to catch him in this era in terms of accolades and awards and Super Bowls. So everyone's kind of battling for number 2, and if you can be the next one to get a ring, I think that's, pretty big. So I think you're absolutely rooting for Patrick Mahomes.
I don't think there's any illusion that Joe Burrow thinks he's, in the same category as Patrick Mahomes in terms of accolades. I don't think he's concerned about it at all. Like, I imagine he watches this game the way, like, I watch a Xavier basketball game. Like, I'm not rooting for anybody. I'm just watching it, right? It's just on my TV. I don't root against Xavier. I probably won't root for the other team. I'm just watching it. I imagine that's what he's doing with the Super Bowl. I don't think he really cares. And to Jacob's point, the Bengals are consistently the only team that are competitive with the Chiefs. So why would you care if the Chiefs keep winning? Because it just makes your resume against them look that much better. Nobody else can do it. You're the only team that has a chance to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. That's been well established up until this point. They would have made 6 straight Super Bowls if it weren't for the Bengals. If you had to put him in a lie detector test to see who he'd be probably rooting for the Eagles, because the NFC has no relevance in terms of his career, his legacy, anything like that. But at the same time, I wouldn't be shocked if it's like, have Patrick Mahomes win another one. at this point, it doesn't. I mean, was he at 4, 5, 6, 7? Keep having him keep winning. That way, when the Bengals beat him in the playoffs next season, it's just going to mean that much more.
We don't know who Burrow's rooting for, but we do know who another Bengals superstar is rooting for. Jamar Chase is, as a noted hater myself, where I aspire to get to at some point in my life. Be as big of a hater as Jamar Chase. He said it's no question who he's rooting for this weekend.
Everyone knows I'm not a KC fan, so I'm hoping Saquon rushes for like 200 this game. So I think overall it'll be a great game just because both sides has great players on each side.
That might be the nicest thing he's ever said about Kansas City.
I think so.
That is probably the nicest thing he's ever said about Kansas City. But yeah, Jamar rooting for the Eagles, so maybe that rivalry is more college-esque than most NFL rivalries.
Yeah.
I think we obviously look at this from a legacy standpoint, and that's what we're talking about with Hurts winning one before Joe Burrow wins one. But I think if you look at this like an Ohio State, Michigan, or an Alabama, Auburn, of course the Bengals aren't rooting for the Chiefs. They're rivals. So maybe these teams really do have that kind of college feel of hatred towards each other and really not wanting to see the other one on top. And I think that's a pretty cool thing that we miss in the NFL more often than not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I just think the competitiveness of these guys as well, and that's the one thing I do love about Jamar Chase is the fact that he is not. And by the way, he's become more mature as his career has gone on.
Yeah.
Like his tone in that he's saying the same thing he's been saying for years. It just sounded more buttoned up and just more mature. You know what I mean? Like usually he's taking more digs, at the Chiefs nonetheless. But I don't think it's a secret that he's never going to pull for the Chiefs whatsoever. When they were talking about the top QBs in the league last year, he was not willing to say, even though I think we all know Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. He was like, I cannot say that he's the best quarterback in the NFL. For one, he's going to roll with Joe Burrow because he believes it, but two, that's his guy, and three, because he was never going to give the Chiefs or Patrick Mahomes or anyone with that organization any kind of credit. If you asked him who's a better head coach, Andy Reid or Zach Taylor, he'll painfully say Zach Taylor because he refuses to give the Chiefs.
I don't know if he'd go that
credit.
far. He might
Really?
he might not answer the question.
You mean Zach?
Yeah, right.
That's
Yeah,
Zach.
his boy ZT.
Yeah. But no, I think deep down Joe Burrow, I don't think he wants either of these guys to win, but I do believe, because nobody, and by the way, no one is debating, man, Jalen Hurts or Joe Burrow, who would you rather have? But Jalen Hurts has won a lot more. He's in his second Super Bowl, and that'll be another quarterback. Because, this is we're waiting for that new blood to come across and get their first Super Bowl of these young quarterbacks that have come into the league and kind of taken over. Patrick Mahomes keeps hogging them all. I think it would really piss Joe Burrow off to see Josh Allen win one before he does, or Lamar win one before he does. I think it irks him that Lamar has 2 MVPs. As I said earlier, I think if it's between Josh Allen and Lamar, I think Joe Burrow's at this point, might as well just give it to Lamar. I don't need Josh Allen having something else or something I don't have. Because right now, all things being equal, you have Patrick Mahomes, who has all the Super Bowl success. Burrow doesn't have that. Lamar has all the MVP success. Burrow doesn't have that, but either does Josh Allen, either does Jalen Hurts. But if you have Jalen Hurts get a Super Bowl, that's another quarterback that now has something that Joe doesn't have. Lamar with all the MVPs, Mahomes with all the Super Bowls, Jalen Hurts, who was drafted in the same draft as him, now he gets a Super Bowl. I think at this point, it's painful. But the Chiefs have to win it if you're Joe Burrow, just to keep that legacy conversation, to keep that another quarterback from being thrown into the conversation with them from that regards.
Just personally, I'd be sick if we have to spend this summer talking about if Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback. Come on. Save me the time. Jesus Christ. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, that defense, Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts is along for the ride, and he might hold the trophy at the end because they have a really, really good roster. If we have to have top 10, top 5 conversations about Jalen Hurts this summer, I'm going to be ill.
I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. I'm a Jalen Hurts guy. I have no knock on Jalen Hurts. He's a part of a play that's going to probably change football and with the tush push. So I have no ill will towards him. I'm probably mentally, or I guess not mentally, in my heart, I'm cheering for the Eagles to win it. I don't think a Super Bowl doesn't change the legacy of Jalen Hurts, in my opinion. Not yet. If he wins an MVP, then we'll start talking about it. But it's, as of this moment, I don't think it changes that much. And I also don't think these quarterbacks go out and they're like, oh man, how many MVPs am I behind in the quarterback race? It's I really don't think that, because outside of a couple guys on ESPN that make it their point to just bash anybody they can for no reason, I like Joe Burrow knows he's a top 5 quarterback. He knows he's a top 4 quarterback.
But is he elite?
But is he elite? It's just talking heads. So if you want to avoid the talking heads, sure, then go ahead and do it. I have a hard time imagining Joe Burrow gives a damn about anything that's said on ESPN.
But he's the most competitive. And it's not just ESPN, by the way. It's all we're talking heads. You know, we're lesser.
We're
talking,
national.
We're poorer talking
guess.
heads.
We have Chiefs fans in the chat.
That's true.
But I think these guys are too competitive to say that they don't care about other quarterbacks winning awards or so. So, Elliot, let me ask you. You said a Super Bowl doesn't matter. The MVP category. If Jalen Hurts wins an MVP, that props him up more than a Super Bowl. It was last week that I think Cam Newton got a lot of heat because he said he would never trade in his MVP for a Super Bowl ever because he earned that MVP and all of that. And that irritated a lot of people because there's a lot of people that say they'll give up all their MVPs to win one Super Bowl for those who don't have them. You're saying an MVP is more valuable than a Super Bowl.
In terms of legacy talk, I think it matters more. I think for a quarterback to establish himself as the best player in a given season, I think that, I do think that matters more than a Super Bowl. I mean, no disrespect to Nick Foles, but Nick Foles has a Super Bowl, right? I mean, Trent Dilfer, he has a Super Bowl. So I like it's you can be a serviceable quarterback and skate your way to a Super Bowl. And I think it's a little bit different because I do think Jalen Hurts offers more than those guys do. But Jalen Hurts would be in a similar type of category where Saquon Barkley is the reason that offense clicks. They have weapons every single position. Their offensive line's incredible. Their defense is incredible. Their head coach, despite what our guy Reed Mouse says, doesn't lose football games. Right. Like, they have the best at every single position except for kicker. So I think that there is some sort of, excuse, if that's the right word, to say, yeah, maybe he was a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl, but that doesn't really change his greatness level for me. I mean, he just skated off the back. If he throws 13 for 20 in the Super Bowl for 125 yards while Saquon runs for 250, it's not his Super Bowl, right?
So the reason I don't give it as much credence to MVPs as Super Bowls is because I get tired of hearing in the MVP, like some of the MVP debate this year about Lamar and Josh Allen. So a lot of people believe Josh Allen will get it just because it's his turn. It's now his turn. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Like with Super Bowls, it's not, well, we're going to give it like Patrick Mahomes has won a lot. So we're just going to give this Super Bowl to Jalen Hurts because it's his turn. It's his second time here. He's earned it. We literally have those conversations about MVP and the voter fatigue and how that plays a role in this. Joe Burrow's great, whether he has the MVP or not. What will separate him from everybody else is his ability to go win a Super Bowl. He's been there. I don't think an MVP separates anyone. I mean, I don't think an MVP has separated Lamar. There's people who are still questioning Lamar's greatness, and he has 2, possibly 3 MVPs coming his way. I think one Super Bowl for Joe Burrow would trump the 3 MVPs that Lamar Jackson's about to have from that perspective. That's why I just can't get on board saying that the MVP is more important than the Super Bowl. However, though, an MVP does cover an entire 3-4 month stretch of a regular season from that in that regards.
More important. I don't know about more important because I disagree with what Cam Newton said. I think any quarterback or any player would probably trade their MVP for a championship.
I don't think any player who only won an MVP and didn't win a Super Bowl would say they'd trade their MVP for a Super Bowl.
You're gonna have to rock that one back.
He won an MVP.
Yeah, we say that.
Win a Super Bowl.
Correct.
He would never say that he didn't love that.
Yeah, no, yeah.
If he had won a Super Bowl and not won an MVP, I'm sure he would say that the Super Bowl was more important. Like,
sure.
Everyone's just forgetting in this whole conversation that he's saying what he did was better. So, of course, he has that take. I think the better conversation, and I heard it brought up on some other podcasts since that quote was given, was which one would he give up? The national championship in college or the Heisman in college? Because that's the only time he won both.
Yeah.
So then you would see which one he values more. But I think he was just more talking about that his legacy is fine without the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then he worded it poorly.
Yeah, that was. And by the way, if all you and to his credit, I'm not going to on national TV say that, hey, yeah, what I accomplished wasn't that great because I didn't win.
Right, that's what I mean.
Like I think if you give him truth serum, no, he's giving up that MVP for a Super Bowl, no doubt. But I don't think he's going to say that because then what he would be admitting is that, yeah, this MVP I have isn't that great. I should have won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Then he's just lessening his career accomplishment. I have no problem with him. By the way, I think Cam Newton, when they hired him, I was like, oh, Cam Newton's going to drive me nuts and all this. He's actually probably one of their better analysts. I've actually been very surprised at how good Cam Newton. Yeah, and like he comes prepared. I actually think he does a very good job. I wasn't expecting that. I thought he was just going to be over the top on everything, and he's not. Does a very good job. I'm surprised by that. But yeah, I thought that take was interesting last week and it got people talking. But
just circling back to what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, I saw people already tweeting that Jalen Hurts has a better career than Cam Newton. This is what I mean. They're either 11 or they're stupid.
If he wins the Super Bowl, what does that do for you versus Kim?
No, not even.
I think, look, let's be
so.
clear. Jalen Hurts' numbers have taken a step back this year, but I don't think it's because he's taken a step back this year. When you have a running back that's doing what Saquon is doing, I don't think he has to put up those numbers. I just don't. Like,
Well,
I think
his numbers taking a step back aren't why. I didn't think he was good when his numbers were better, to be fair.
No.
Man, you're out. I'm a Jalen Hurts guy.
I think he's a top 20 quarterback in the league.
Might be a
phenomenal leader.
Might be a little bit of bias in there somewhere.
Wait, why would Hurts bias?
Alabama fan.
Oh,
He wins
yeah.
the championship.
Yeah, it's true.
Alabama loves Jalen Hurts.
Did Tua win it, though? I mean, that's always that weird
SEC,
one, right?
the year after. He came in at halftime for Tua got hurt. He came in at halftime and won SEC.
Those storylines were wild. Like
was a crazy couple
James
years.
Franklin team himself. That was pretty cool. And then to go win a Heisman at Oklahoma. Just like, all right, well, I'm done with you guys. I'm just going to go over here and do my thing. Pretty, good for him. All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Let's pick up with this. I don't want to spend a lot of time because we did touch on the Joe Burrow's comments on, continuing to pressure the front office. He said more that I just want to highlight, and then we'll move on from it. As far as, again, he was very vocal all week. He took advantage of that mic. That mic was hot for all week, last week, and over the weekend, and he made sure he capitalized on all the mic time that he got. Thought that was pretty cool. We'll close out the Burrow conversation when it comes to that when we come back. We'll get into that NBA trade from over the weekend and tie it into our teams that we follow. What was that oh my God trade that your team has fulfilled throughout your fandom? Because everyone the NBA has been an afterthought for people for a couple of years now. And that was the first time in a while where the NBA dominated headlines over the weekend. And that was a big trade. What was that trade that happened for any of the teams that you follow that you specifically remember being that oh my God moment? We'll get to that coming up later on in the show as well. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll be right back. And Jacob, I didn't even think about this. Our guy Fitzy, he has to be pretty happy. He seemed pretty happy about getting old Chip Kelly on his Raiders for the OC spot.
I sure would be.
Hey, I love that staff. Hatcha Graham is your DC, Chip Kelly is your OC, and you have, of course, obviously, a very successful head coach leading the way. I kind of like what's happening with the Raiders from a coaching standpoint, but they just don't have all the ingredients to cook a good meal at the moment. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of the Raiders right now. They need a quarterback. They need a quarterback
bad. And if they're going to go into next season with an overpaid Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell,
AOC.
I don't think it matters who's on their staff.
Hey, come on, AOC. I'm not giving up on AOC yet. He could be a top 28 quarterback.
The Raiders, though, do you spend $6 million on an offensive coordinator when you don't have a quarterback? I don't want to talk Browns, but if I'm the Browns, you have to think that they're being pretty aggressive trying to get that quarterback, right? Like, you're not doing this to go get
a quarterback.
Russ? Please say it's not Russ.
I think it's Shedeur at 1.
You think they're going to move all the way up to 1 to make sure that they get their guy?
I don't think these hires make any sense unless they have Shedeur at 1. You don't go get Pete Carroll if you're going to spin the tires on a mid-round quarterback. You don't pay Chip Kelly $6 million if you're going to spin the tires on a mid-level signing like, Winston or something like that. Like, you're going to go get a guy. Maybe that guy's Russ. Maybe Pete Carroll talked that whole building into believing in Russ, but I have a hard time believing that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's willing to ride again with Russ. Go through that. That's interesting nonetheless. But I agree with you 100%. I didn't think anything about the Raiders. And I was like, they're not going to trade all the way up. But you don't spend $6 million on an OC for Gardner Minshew or some mid-level free agent quarterback as just discussed. So we'll see. Nonetheless. But Casey, I know we just discussed this too. Joe Burrow sitting back, watching the Super Bowl this weekend. Jalen Hurts, chance to win his first Super Bowl, taken in the same draft as Burrow. And then Patrick Mahomes, who just keeps hogging all these Super Bowl trophies. Deep down, who do you think Burrow's pulling for? A super competitive guy. I have a hard time believing that he's looking at these two saying, I don't care who wins. I kind of need this guy to win because I don't need this guy jumping ahead of me in some category. Who do you think he's pulling for on Sunday?
He's definitely pulling for the Eagles. He's definitely pulling for Jalen Hurts. He does not want to see Kansas City break they don't want to be glorified in the Hall of Fame forever for being a three-peat team, for being one of the best dynasties in all the NFL. I think he would rather see Jalen Hurts win a trophy before him. I think he would rather see Josh Allen win over any of those guys, or possibly even like Justin Herbert. I think it gets a little different when it's like Lamar because it's in your division, but Kansas City Chiefs are our adopted rival, at least for that team, our fan base. We do not like Kansas City. We cannot see them win a third time in a row. That would just be devastating. I did, however, look up Jalen Hurts' numbers, because I was curious, because I'm kind of undecided on him, and it's been a few years, and I should probably make a stance on how I feel about him. I think he is a top 15 quarterback, and I think that's just where he's at. Every single year, it feels like he's just like he's not the top 5, he's not in the top echelon, but he's definitely not like a guy, like he's a guy that you would want on your team to build a franchise around. And that's what the Eagles did. And they're in the Super Bowl, and they've done it with them twice. It's working. So I think that means he is a top echelon quarterback in terms of where the other teams are in the bottom half of the league. They would want Jalen Hurts on their team. The dude, all-purpose yards, has had almost 5,000 yards every single season except for this year and his rookie year. Like I think that's pretty damn good. And on top of that, you look at the touchdowns that he's accumulated over that time. I know he's only ever eclipsed 23 touchdowns passing, but he's had 10-plus, 13-plus touchdowns running the ball with the tush push, which pushes him. If you add those numbers together, it looks really, really good for him as a quarterback. Not to mention, too, his QBR. I don't know how much you guys care about those type of metrics, but it's been pretty good. Been pretty good. So I know the team, the Eagles, really, really good, really solid. Everywhere you look, there's a potential Hall of Famer or just a really great player. But that's just the organization the Eagles are. They just have that ability to build that roster out. And I don't think that Jalen Hurts should be knocked for that. People knock Joe Burrow for having T. Higgins and Jamar Chase all the time. But Jalen Hurts is the one throwing the ball to him. And I've watched him throw some pretty balls to those guys. So I think I like him. I think he's a pretty good quarterback.
How many rushing touchdowns did you say Jalen Hurts had this year?
He had 14.
12 of those were from the 1-yard line. That's not a positive for me. I'm not using those as rushing stats to boost him up with some kind of massive total touchdown number. Those are Saquon's touchdowns.
How many touchdown throws did Joe Burrow have in the red zone? I mean, that's the
A
similar
tush
stat.
push is not a rushing touchdown in my eyes. I'm eliminating basically all of those. Those are Saquon's touchdowns that they're stealing from him.
Yeah, but you're also eliminating him from potentially throwing a touchdown in the red zone too. Like, it's just
Well,
their
he can't
offense.
do that.
Like,
he can't pass in short yardage. He hasn't been able to at any point in his career.
That's all he does is RPOs.
Short yardage passing in the red zone, he's one of the worst red zone quarterbacks in the league.
Because he does the tush push.
Which is not a positive. They installed the tush push because he can't throw.
There's no other quarterback that does it.
Because there's no other quarterback that can squat 700 pounds because it's not conducive to playing quarterback, which is why Jalen Hurts isn't very good. You said two things in there I disagreed with. It's the rushing touchdowns I disagreed with, and then you said the Eagles built their team around Jalen Hurts, which couldn't be more false. They went and traded for the number 1 wide receiver on the market, drafted Devontae Smith in the first round, got the number 1 running back on the market. That's not building around the quarterback. That's giving a mediocre quarterback excuses to be mediocre and still win.
Giving your quarterback weapons.
I don't think you go out and sign a top 5 receiver duo and the best running back in football if you think you have an elite quarterback.
Okay, so we should just not sign T. Higgins.
You let Joe Mixon walk to have a cheap running back, so you sign the 2 wide receivers. You don't sign a whole contingent if you have
Well, it's a different organization, like I said before. They're paying like 10, 15 guys, $10+ million. Like,
they have what, eight starters in the draft on defense, rookie contracts.
Again, they have almost their entire starting offense is making $10+ million. Like, I don't know, man. I just think if they had any other quarterback, it'd be a little different.
Better.
Would it not? Nah, I don't know if it'd be better.
Also, teams in the low level of the league wouldn't take Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts needs stuff around him to succeed. If you put Jalen Hurts on like the Bucks, they're not as good this year as they were with Baker.
I mean, we wouldn't know. We won't know.
By the way, Casey, I'm more on your side. I think Jalen Hurts is a fine quarterback, but I do think that a large portion of his game is the tush push, and not every team in the league has that offensive line that the Eagles have had for his entire career. And that's where I think it's a little bit different, because if he doesn't have the tush push, what kind of a quarterback is he? That's my only thing. But to our point, and I'm on your side on this one, he does have that line, and I would say he's done his job up to near perfection. If he wins the Super Bowl this year, he has done it up to perfection. So we'll find out what happens in that Super Bowl, but he's done his job.
I said he was a top 20 quarterback to start this, and you said he's top 15. So we're really only arguing like 3-4 spots.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only arguing that there would be a lot of teams that would want him. I think that's my argument. And also, I would have agreed with you about the tush push thing, but then they lost their Hall of Fame center, and then they've had a rotating door at guard. Like, I don't know. That interior of the offensive line has changed quite a bit, and it's still working. There's a reason for that, and that's Jalen Hurts' legs, and there's no other quarterback that does that. That's a positive. Whether that's a tiny positive or big positive, we can debate that. Like, I don't think it's a crazy thing, but it enables their offense to be more effective in the red zone, and that's what you want. You want to score. So I don't think it should be a negative.
Oh, I didn't say it was a negative. It doesn't move the needle. Like, Saquon had 13 touchdowns this year. I basically view Saquon as a 20-touchdown back this year.
Okay.
Like, you see
so
what I'm saying?
you're taking away half of his rushing
more or less.
Okay.
More or less.
Well, that still puts him in a pretty good spot, if you ask me. That's still like a top 15 quarterback to me. Right?
I have him somewhere 18, 19, 20.
Come on. I mean, you have to give the guy a little bit of credit. I mean, I think he's earned that. I mean, to run a play that quite literally, I mean, you saw Josh Allen try to run the play. He doesn't know how to run the play. Jalen Hurts knows how to run the play. The only negative against him is that his offensive line is so good that if he were to leave, he probably wouldn't have the same amount of success. That's the only negative that he has, in my opinion.
Jalen Hurts is what Lamar Jackson haters want Lamar Jackson to be.
Maybe.
I think that's
a
pretty perfect encapsulation.
Yeah. I think that's fair. But that's still a pretty damn good quarterback. I think a lot of
he's a running back.
We're so close. We're so close.
That was a touch and go segment too.
We have a super chat. We have a super chat. Let's get the super chat out of the way here. Colin Will, member for 7 months. Thank you very much, Colin. Mike Brown, it's simple. Either sign Jamar, T, and Trey, or you lose Joe Burrow and you watch your franchise die. Don't screw it up, Mike.
Well, that's a good transition to the video, to the clip of Joe Burrow, who's just been very outspoken about what the Bengals front office needs to do. But closing thoughts on that before we get to that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. I agree with Colin. If you don't do this, you're going to upset your quarterback, and if you upset your quarterback, then I don't know what exactly this franchise is. You know, we just talked about Jalen Hurts and how he has literally everything, every single position. It's pretty much the opposite for Joe Burrow outside of the wide receiver room. So if you're going to take away from the one thing he has, I don't know how that's conducive to a 15 or excuse me an 11 to 12 win season or a deep playoff run, potentially getting the 1 seed in the playoffs. To me, it's just you can't do it.
All right. Well, it's pretty simple, as everyone says, and actually it seems simple enough because Joe Burrow says we can make it happen, and that caught everyone's attention over the weekend. And we'll have that soundbite in our reaction coming up for you next. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. That wow trade that your team pulled off, that just you remember to this day, where you were, how and when you found out, and your reaction was what? We'll get to that coming up because it seems to be a moment for a lot of NBA fans coming out of the weekend. Luka Dončić now, of course, a Los Angeles Laker, along with paired up with LeBron James. Anthony Davis now being sent to the Dallas Mavericks, to play obviously with Kyrie Irving and company. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But that is everybody talking, and it just got me to thinking about some of those big trades that our teams have pulled off in our lifetime that we remember vividly what our reaction was, and we'll get to that coming up in a bit. But Joe Burrow over the weekend was very outspoken. We talked about it on Friday. But he continued talking. He had more to say. And I think there's just one line that got everyone to feel pretty confident now about the Bengals having a chance to get it done in regards to, obviously, Burrow's already taken care of. But Jamar Chase about to be taken care of. But what about Trey Hendrickson and what about T. Higgins? Joe Burrow says he feels pretty confident they can get it done. Take a listen.
You learn a lot of discipline through those times when, we're playing in meaningful games down the stretch, but, we knew we needed help at the end. So when you're in that position, it's tough to maintain the consistency and discipline that you need every day to go out and play well. And so I was proud of myself for pushing through that, and all of our guys for doing that. You learn it's not a position I've been in before, so whenever you're in new positions like that, you learn a lot.
What about the beginning of the season? Obviously, you guys have been getting off to these slow starts, and I know it's like in the back of your mind, like we got to play better, but something clicks and you guys turn it on. How do you switch that up for next year? How do you get to that fast start?
We just got to execute better early in the year, whether, we need to change something in the offseason or we just need to execute better down the stretch. We came in a lot of close games that came down to one or two calls and plays that we did or didn't make.
But you said statistically you had one of your best seasons of 43 touchdowns, over 4,800 yards. Just tell me, for you at the quarterback position, how is it now? What are you seeing now on the field, because you have this calmness to you?
Yeah, everything's moving pretty slow for me right now. It feels good being in the spot that I'm at. I work hard for everything that I have and everything that I do, and I have a great routine at this point in my career for facilitating my success on the field, and it's a good feeling.
Last couple for you, Joe. Obviously, it's an offseason in which you're trying to figure out some contracts for some guys, whether on the offensive side, T, and Jamar, and defensive side, Trey. How does this organization go about trying to get everybody back to run it back again?
Yeah, we can make it happen. And it just has to be right for everybody involved. And I know the players want to make it work. We all want to be together. So I don't see it not working out, but we'll see.
I don't see it not working out, but we'll see. He says we can get it done. It has to make sense for everyone. Obviously, a lot of these lines we've heard from Duke Tobin saying, it has to make sense for everybody. We roll our eyes at that. We hear Joe Burrow say, he says he's confident that they can get it done. He doesn't see why they can't get it done. And like I said, it hits different. When you hear Duke Tobin say it, whatever, we roll our eyes because we don't trust that front office. But when Joe Burrow says something, we latch on to it. You guys trust your quarterback. You trust Joe Burrow. Your takeaways after hearing him say he doesn't see why they can't get it done, your takeaway is what?
My takeaway is, again, I kind of mentioned it last week, my takeaway is that whatever Joe Burrow wants, I'm going to say that Joe Burrow is going to get. And the fact that he wants this, he wants T. Higgins, he wants Trey Hendrickson, he wants those things, and I think the front office is going to have to listen. You cannot risk, especially in today's sports landscape, where requesting a trade because you're upset for half a year has become so much of the norm. You know what's going to happen if you upset this guy. You know he's going to want out. And whether or not that's right, that's the way sports have been going for the past 10 years or so. And I'm not going to say that Joe Burrow would request a trade immediately, but I think it's just another notch on that line, because if he goes in the next season without a number 2 wide receiver, without a decent defensive player, then I don't know what the Bengals are doing. I don't know how you can be taken seriously as an organization if you're going to take away from a team that already underachieved. You can't do it. You have to bring him back. You have to pay him. And then you have to go out. You have to draft well, and you have to get more talent. There's so much the Bengals have to do, and it starts by keeping the guys you already have. You have to keep them. And I think if Joe Burrow wants that, and if he's going to continue to plead for it openly in front of the national media, then I think the Bengals have to do it.
I think you're right. I think Bengals fans have 2 options, and it's you either believe Joe Burrow, as every single time he gets a microphone, he tells you that we need to keep these guys, we're going to keep these guys, they're working together to keep these guys, they're going to make the money work, et cetera, et cetera. Or you just think the Bengals front office is going to continue to be the Bengals front office and operate how they have for the last however many years. And those are the 2 camps you can be in. It's a lot more fun as a Bengals fan to be in the Believe Joe Burrow camp. Joe Burrow's been a great quarterback for the team, one of the best players, if not the best player in franchise history, and he's telling us that we're going to keep our guys. So we're choosing to believe him. Now, I do totally understand why people outside of Cincinnati are a little less eager to believe him. Yeah. They've seen how the Bengals front office, Duke Tobin, Mike Brown, have operated for years and years and years, and that wouldn't align with re-signing all these guys at top of the market values. So I understand both sides of it. Every time I hear Joe Burrow speak, the more and more confident I get that they're going to be able to bring these guys back. I don't know whether it's the smartest move or not. I keep going back and forth on that, but I know the smartest move is keeping Joe Burrow happy. So whatever gets you to that point, I'm going to be okay with. And right now it seems like the only way to get to that point is re-signing T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson.
Elliot, you brought up a good point too. Like, you got to keep him happy. And what happens if you don't? Like, and then this isn't waving a flag to induce, panic or anything like that. But like, what if they only keep one of 2? Are you worried then? If they get a deal for Trey, but they do move on from T, is that okay? If they keep T but move on from Trey, and I think some of you have said you're like Trey, it kind of makes sense to move on from Hendrickson in regards to like because of how old he is. Do you give him that big contract? There would be a little hesitancy right there. What happens if they don't do exactly what he wants? What if we head into next season and there's not a T. Higgins and a Trey Hendrickson along with obviously Jamar and company? What happens then? Because I don't think anything happens like, oh, he wants out of Cincinnati right now. But I do think if we look back in history and things go bad and poorly moving forward, we could say that it was the 2025 offseason that's where the crack in the foundation truly started. Is that safe to say if something doesn't go as planned this upcoming offseason?
I don't think it's about signing one or the other. I like if you go out and you find a Calvin Ridley, a guy that can replace T. Higgins, a guy that has similar production, sure, it would probably be fine with Joe Burrow if you bring back Trey Hendrickson too. It's like, but we all know in this room and your studio in Dayton, we're all aware that the Bengals not only have the funds, but have the ability with the cap to make all of these signings. They can bring him back. They can bring Trey back. They can bring T back. We know that's a possibility, so why don't you do it? That's my thing. To me, it's not about, signing one or the other. It's about doing what you have the capabilities of being able to do, and that's bringing both back. You can do that, and anything else would be an excuse unless you have a plan. If your plan is to dump T and we'll find 2 great wide receivers to replace him, that's the plan. And then let's see it. But I don't know if that is their plan. I don't know what the plan is. Nobody does. And to be quite honest, whatever their plan would be, I don't trust it anyway. The only thing I do trust is what we have, and what we have is Joe Burrow, 2 elite wide receivers, and the guy that leads the league in sacks. That's what we have. So if you want to take away from that, go ahead, but just know that you have the option to bring them all back and be fine for next year. Still sign guys, still draft well, and do your job as the front office.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. I'm surprised you guys have you guys checked Twitter?
I was gonna see if you had.
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
I missed it.
No,
what happened?
It's a Cincinnati-based show, guys.
What happened?
We only talk Cincinnati. Don't worry about it. We'll be right back. Off the Bench presented by
What
United.
happened?
You guys are always trying to talk Browns all the time. You guys are obsessed.
We're talking Bengals because he's coming to Paycor.
Wait, so if your players are upset, they can what now? They can request trades? What?
Hitter's top 5 Cincinnati Bengals. Oh, why did you have that? Who was that? What
Oh
the hell?
no!
Oh,
That's
no.
fake news.
What,
Fake news.
Casey? Can you read that for me? I'm having a hard time reading it.
We gotta go to break.
Set it up as a
No,
tease.
we don't. No, we don't. No, we don't.
Tease.
All right, it's a tease.
Someone
All right,
requested a
you
trade
guys
from
can take
somewhere.
over from here. Kinder's taking the rest of the day off. We'll be right back. We're off the bench. What the hell? All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Austin Hayes, you look at all the additions the Reds made. Your favorite move the Reds made this offseason. We're spending the rest of the show on this. Love the Reds. That's all we're talking is Reds. Y'all aren't going to let me do that, are you?
No.
My favorite move the Reds made this offseason is the one coming in a couple weeks. So Sal Stewart for Myles Garrett?
Yes.
Myles Garrett to DH in Great America.
Yes.
Myles Garrett officially requested a trade from the Browns during our last segment. Casey, my eyes aren't as good as they used to be, if you could read that for our lovely listeners.
Yeah, I gotcha. As a kid, dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. And that goal fuels me today more than ever. My love for the community of Northeast Ohio and the incredible fan base of the Cleveland Browns has made this one of the toughest decisions of his life. These past 8 years have shaped me into the man that I am today. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It was always and has been to compete and to win a Super Bowl. And with that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Signed, Myles Garrett.
So as I mentioned, Nick Martinez, my favorite move that the Reds made. Obviously, you have to love Terry Francona. But what say you guys?
Here's the thing about the Cleveland Browns, and I want to make this very clear. So and Kinner's not here.
Trevino is a very underrated move.
He can't throw anything at me. That's the most important part here. When you start bringing up Super Bowls and things, and then you play for the Cleveland Browns, it's probably not going to go your way. So it's a good trade request by him, the franchise. That now I will say you have to be thrilled with the Dallas Mavericks, because that move is arguably worse than what your guys did with your quarterback. So I'm going to say this. That move probably set the Browns back. How many years do you think that move set the Browns back? 10 years? 5 years?
Like 3.
3? Only 3 years? Because that's what this is, and it's unfortunate that it's gone the way that it has. Not for me personally, but for Browns fans. That move single-handedly set that franchise back I don't know how many years, and they're going to be recovering from it for a while. They got a lot of work to do going forward to fix everything, and we'll see what happens. But this was going to happen. I mean, you can't possibly say next year that it's that we're confident in whatever quarterback situation we're going to have if you're the Cleveland Browns. So if the guy wants to win a Super Bowl, he knows he can't do that in Cleveland, respectfully, anytime soon.
Very glad I don't have to play him twice a year.
Yeah,
he ruins my life 2 Sundays or Thursdays
Bengal?
or Mondays.
Could he be a Bengal?
Would love him to be a Bengal.
What if he's a Bengal?
Not at what the current asking price or trade prices are. No way in any corner of this universe would I trade 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett. I think that's probably going to be what he goes for. But I also don't know how much you can control your trade value when you're demanding to go to a contender. Because the teams that usually give up those multiple firsts to compete are usually teams, that aren't quite as good. So I don't know if those better organizations with better front offices would give up 2 first-round picks. Myles Garrett's an incredible player. He's a top 3-2-1 defensive player in football. Yeah. I mean, it's him and T.J. Watt as the debate year in and year out. Obviously, we throw Trey Hendrickson in there in the edge rusher conversation over here in Cincinnati. But Myles Garrett, certainly at the top of NFL defensive players. He's going to be incredibly highly sought after. My question, I guess, mainly for Kinner is, do you think you could have gotten more value for him if you would have put him up at the trade deadline like a lot of people thought? Because now that he's requested a trade, you might be kind of hamstrung in terms of only having a certain number of teams that he's willing to go to. If you would have put him up at the trade deadline, maybe a desperate Lions team gives you more than they would give you now. Maybe someone else that he doesn't necessarily have on his list would give you some more picks for him than you'd get right now. I don't know. Just that was the first thing I thought of.
I still want Pete Alonso at first base if you're the Reds. I think that would add a power bat in the middle of the lineup. Look, yeah, I hate you guys.
You can't. I feel like I was nice. Elliot was mean. I feel like
I was mean. You can't be that mad about this because you knew the Browns weren't going to be competitive next year. You at least get to replenish the well here, get some first-round picks, and start the process of rebuilding that disaster that happened a couple years ago. You can't be that upset about this.
You're losing a generational player. I'm upset about that. However, I was on the train of not really like leading the train of saying, hey, they need to move on from Myles Garrett, but like with the direction that they're going in with how bad that quarterback situation got, the best way. This actually might end up being the best of both worlds for both sides. Myles Garrett gets to a contender. Correct. The Browns have a chance to dig them. And by the way, I don't actually hate you guys. I'm laughing at the fact that in the middle of the show, no even chance to prepare for the crap pile that's going to come down on me for the next hour and a half or whatever we have of the show still. But no, this isn't the end of the world for Cleveland. However, you're losing a generational talent. Like, let's be clear. Like, the Rams were a very, very deep team with Aaron Donald. You lose Aaron Donald, and they had one of the worst defenses. They've had one of the worst defenses the last 2 years, and they still have a lot of the same guys that they had when Aaron Donald was there. He was the straw that stirred that drink over with the Rams, and I think that Myles Garrett's going to have that same impact not being on the field for Cleveland moving forward. The one thing it does give them is options now. They obviously have the number 2 pick in the draft. You're going to acquire at least 1, maybe 2 first-round picks coming up. Will they both be in this year's draft? Probably not, obviously, but one of them obviously will be. they're going to have a chance to replenish some of this, and the money that now will not be going to him could be used to patch other holes elsewhere. I still think there's a decent enough talent on this roster that they could just patch a few holes and go to being competitive if they hit on a rookie quarterback. And to me, what this signifies is, I think you guys said during the break, Abdul Carter, that's probably who they're going to end up getting. That's a very good defensive option right there. Jake, you made a good point, though. Rather face him twice a year than have to face Myles Garrett twice a year. But I don't think they're going to go Abdul Carter right there, mainly because of the fact that I think the reason Myles Garrett wants out is he didn't want to be a part of a rebuild. He wanted a plan of how they were going to compete moving forward. And I think that with how much the Browns have been leaning into the rookie quarterback conversation, that doesn't do it for Myles Garrett. That screams rebuild when you're going to use that top pick to get a quarterback. So I think they're going quarterback, and I think it's going to be Shedeur. I know we talked about the Raiders earlier. The Browns have an option. The Browns have options here to load up on picks.
Yeah.
Because if the Raiders really want that and the Titans are set on Cam Ward or Shedeur or whoever, they can look at the Raiders and say, well, let's flop, we'll swap those picks, get an additional second-round pick, whatever they need to do. I think the Browns have a get-out-of-jail no pun intended, free card here. If they accrue enough draft picks and they hit on these draft picks, that's the quickest way to get out. Look, we watch what Washington did hitting on a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels. People aren't going to put Shedeur in that conversation, but I think he's the closest to that in this draft. Cleveland has options. That's the biggest thing. And if you can get like a Tez out of Arizona and a Shedeur, and that's your quarterback wide receiver combo moving forward with Jerry Jeudy and company, more power to you. They have options. That's all I'm going to say about that. Not good to lose Myles Garrett. I will never pretend that that's the case, but you're going to get a haul back. That's the only silver lining to this.
I just think it's the first step of healing. The past few years. I think
Chubb's
it's like
probably gone this offseason too.
100%.
So that whole star kind of core.
You get a reset button, and I really don't. I understand your point, because like if I were not to keep throwing back to the comparison to the Mavericks, but if I lost Luka at age 25 in his prime mid-season, I'd be pretty upset, right? I don't think the Cleveland Browns right now. I don't think they're just. Completely disappointed at losing a guy who will be a part of a team that won't succeed next year. This starts the process of trying to improve the roster. I think this is a good thing for the Cleveland Browns.
Another stark difference there is the Mavericks were in the finals last year.
That's very different. That's very different.
Were just there.
No, it's
if the Browns were in the Super Bowl last year and then traded Myles Garrett this year, I think it's a much different conversation. But we've kind of seen this coming. What week was it, Kenner? He said it this season that if the Browns aren't going to compete next year, he was going to request a trade. Yeah. So he more or less said that this was going to happen down the line. And what do you think the move that he was waiting for was? Is that them saying we're going to take Abdul Carter, put him next to you, and go sign a Kirk Cousins? Like, is that the move that Myles Garrett wanted to not request a trade? Because the way he laid it out on how he was going to handle this seems early to me, unless the Browns already have their minds made up for the draft.
I think it's the opposite. I think it's the fact that I think they're leaning quarterback. Everything I hear, like I listen to a lot of sports talk over in Cleveland, and everything about the Browns right now is they're super high on Shedeur. But this is also that time of year where you put stuff out there to lead people on to make you think certain things, and who knows? Browns aren't that bright of an organization, so I don't want to give them too much credit here. I think Shedeur is where they are leaning. I know there was a comment made that Shedeur had recently said over the weekend that he'll go play wherever, so that made the Browns fans feel a little way about that. I think it's going the rookie quarterback route that Myles Garrett's not a fan of, because that's a risk if you're Myles Garrett. I do know you competed with Joe Burrow. Sorry, you competed with Joe Flacco. You competed. I think if you're Myles Garrett, you wanted a veteran quarterback to come in to run this offense and give you a chance to compete. But even then, there was no option that was going to make Myles Garrett feel like the Browns were a Super Bowl contender. I'm not a delusional Browns fan. I don't think there's a move they can make this offseason to make him a Super Bowl contender. So if he was looking for that move to make them a Super Bowl contender, I don't think that move exists for Cleveland this offseason. So this should have just been known that he was going to request the trade. However, if he just wanted them to be competitive, the Joe Flacco route or a veteran quarterback route or a Kirk Cousins route would have made way more sense. This screams that they're not going to go the Kirk Cousins route. It screams Shedeur rookie quarterback route, and I think that's why he doesn't want to take that gamble and be a risk of a quarterback that everyone is saying is going to come from one of the worst quarterback draft classes in quite some time. So
people in the chat saying Bengal, and I don't know about whatever the value would be, but I think a bigger question, especially in the Bengals kind of vein of this whole thing, is do you think this could kickstart a bigger teardown of the Cleveland Browns? A David Njoku, a Denzel Ward, a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, any of those big star players that are really, really good Could they be traded to other teams this offseason?
I think they should. You might as well. This is your get. I mean, if you're the ownership and you're, the Haslams and company, like you're going to be on. You have the Deshaun contract on the books for the next couple of years. Use this next couple of years to rely on cheap rookie talent to develop and figure out who you have. While you have to pay that monstrosity of a stupid contract at this point, get out of it and then have a fresh start coming out. And then right back to
that'd be a dream offseason, Casey. We've been talking about adding a corner. Imagine if the Bengals could go trade for Denzel Ward if the Browns tear it down.
That'd be crazy.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the middle of Al Golden's defense. There's a lot of good pieces on that Browns defense for cheaper than Myles Garrett if they do tear it down.
Yeah, I'd be all for it. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, do we really need 2 first-rounders? I mean,
Casey, I love this version of you. It's my favorite. I'm not going to lie. This Casey's my favorite Casey because I can't even get mad at it. It's the grin. It's the smirk. And you know how I am about smirks. It's the smirks. It's the tone. It's the confidence. It's the arrogance. It's the Casey that we have all just grown to love. I'm telling you. Keep going, Casey. Keep going. I deserve it.
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of good pieces on that defense. I don't think any of them are going to head to Cincinnati. That's just not how the Bengals operate. But if this is a sign of the teardown, a bigger teardown incoming, that's a shame because I do think that Browns roster was ready to win. It just needed to figure out one piece, and it just didn't work out. And I do feel for the Cleveland Browns fans that they were kind of just didn't quite get there. They were right there. It's so hard to win the NFL. It's so hard to just put the roster all together. And hopefully that they can figure this out and maybe start over. And it would be a quick start over, a quick jump if you guys get a hit on the quarterback. So
I was going to say, you don't draft a quarterback now, right? Next year you go into a generational tank, and then you try.
I'm 100% with Kenner. I don't think Myles Garrett's a question to trade if you're not drafting a quarterback too.
Okay. Interesting.
But I like Elliott's point because if this is the case, I would take Abdul Carter at 2.
Yeah.
I would get a bunch of defensive pieces, load up on offensive line, do what you need to do, and then obviously move on. I would trade Jerry Jeudy. I would trade obviously Denzel Ward, as you guys talked about, lose a bunch of games, get a top, position yourself for a top pick next year, and then go get one of the great quarterbacks. And I don't even think you have to be top 5 next year to get a good quarterback. The quarterback's coming out next year. Of course, we said that this past year. We thought this class this year was going to be pretty solid. We thought Quinn was going to be very, very good. We thought, obviously, Alabama's quarterback was going to be very, very good. So you take that chance. But, yeah, I feel like they're going Shador or Cam mainly just because I don't think Myles is staying around for a rebuild, and to me, rookie quarterbacks signal that. But I look at what the Commanders have done. I look at what the Houston Texans have done. The only reason CJ was CJ is because they had talent around him. The only reason that Jane Daniels could be Jane Daniels is because they had talent around him. I still think if Cleveland takes Shador and Shador is actually good, you actually have weapons that he could be good with. I don't know. This NFL is weird because this idea that you get a rookie quarterback, you get rid of all the talent, that doesn't make sense. There's teams proving you could win with rookie quarterbacks, but Myles Garrett doesn't believe they could win with any of these rookie quarterbacks probably, but who knows? He deserves to go somewhere and win, though. He deserves to go somewhere and win. He's been patient. He's been patient enough with Cleveland, so more power to him.
You mentioned it earlier, generational player. Certainly haven't seen someone like this request a trade very often, if at all. But Adam Schefter just tweeted out a potential decent trade comp for what Myles Garrett could get, much better than his comp for the Luka Dončić trade, which I'm sure we'll talk about next segment. But a potential trade comp for Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, 29, coming off a 14-sack season, reigning Defensive Player of the Year. Khalil Mack was 27 when he requested a trade from Oakland to Chicago. The Bears gave up 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, a sixth-round pick for Khalil Mack, a second-round pick, and a fifth-round pick. So it seems like a 2 first-round picks payment for Myles Garrett seems to be about the floor, but maybe even more than that for Myles Garrett and that name value alone.
Yeah, Washington, Detroit. Those are the contenders that those are the teams that Myles could go to and get what he wants and go contend. I think Washington, they're brought up in the T conversation. They're brought up really in any. They have so much cap space, so they're going to be in any conversation that's out there. And the Lions have proven that they're willing to swing for the fences as well. But that would be a jump from one weird organization to another, even though the Lions have won over the last couple of years. you got to trust that the Lions are going to continue to make the right moves and be good enough down the stretch to get there. So they're much better than the Browns, though, if they go the Lions route. But you guys didn't have to take it easy on me. I deserve this one. I mean, Myles Garrett wants out. There you go. But
Diana Rossini reporting that one NFL GM believes that people suggesting that it's 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett are crazy, and anyone saying 3 ones doesn't know how the NFL works. A 1 and a 2, a 1 and 2 threes, maybe a player. That's just one NFL GM, but an interesting anecdote as we try to figure out, how much this trade could potentially cost. I certainly think it's 2 ones. I could not imagine them moving Myles Garrett for less than 2 ones.
Yeah, we'll see. A 1 at least. There at least one is going to be a part of that as far as that goes. But just another day in the life of a Browns fan. So
I genuinely think it's good for you guys. So I'm not gonna I genuinely think it's the first right step.
Well, that was the debate at the trade deadline. It's crazy that the Browns would move on from Myles Garrett. I'm like, it's not as crazy as you guys think. We don't want to get rid of Myles Garrett, but I mean, the return you would get would really help load this team up to start patching holes moving forward. But hey, I think him requesting it makes it easier because, okay, he wants out. But it just depends if the Cleveland organization – I mean, their GM just came out last week and said there's no way in hell they're trading him. And then a week later, Myles is like, oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Get me out. But nonetheless. All right, so again, that's a shocker for Cleveland fans. It's kind of humorous for you guys. I get it. I understand. But when we come back, there was a big trade that, like right now, we hear Myles Garrett requesting the trade. He's requesting. It's not going to be a shock when Adam Schefter comes out and says, breaking news, Washington sends 2 firsts and a 5th-round pick to Cleveland for Myles Garrett. We won't be shocked. We won't be surprised, right? Because we're expecting him to be moved. Imagine if in the middle of this show we just found out that Myles Garrett was just gone. He was in Washington. He was, the trade was done. There was no rumblings, no rumors, no nothing. That would be a shock. And that's what happened in the NBA over the weekend. Luka, after leading Dallas to the NBA Finals last year, in the middle of the season, with more than a week to go before the NBA trade deadline, is just gone. He's been traded to the Lakers. Anthony Davis helped the Lakers win an NBA championship. Just gone. He's out of Los Angeles. He's in Dallas now. They're saying it's the most shocking move in NBA history from a trade perspective. Do you guys agree? Plus, we'll talk about what is the most shocking trade that your team ever made, whether it be the Reds, whether it be the Bengals, whether it be NFL, Major League Baseball, anything. We'll discuss when we come back. More Off the Bench next. Jake, what were you saying before that you would or would not? That 2 ones is a lot?
I would not personally, speaking as the Bengals, trade 2 ones for Myles Garrett because he has 2 years left on his deal. He'll be 31 at the time of that ending. I don't think the Bengals are going to then give him some kind of elite big money edge rusher contract. That's quite literally exactly where we're at with Trey Hendrickson right now. And Myles Garrett costs more money than that. Don't think at 31 the Bengals are going to extend him, in which case I wouldn't give up 2 ones for it's a first-round pick every year he plays for the Bengals. So that's the only reason I wouldn't do that. I would easily give 2 ones for Myles Garrett if I can get a long-term extension done. I think he's an elite player. I think he's going to be phenomenal. I think that would be pretty smart for a team. I just wouldn't if I'm the Bengals.
If you're the Giants, if I'm the Browns, I'd look at the Giants and say, hey, we want your top pick. And now all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like, I think the Giants, I'm trying to look around at the NFL and think teams
Giants
that make
wouldn't want that, though. Like, why would you, like, during
Giants are a team that could have you could talk yourself into a big net positive because Kayvon Thibodeau's been so bad since his rookie year. You're thinking maybe you bring in Myles Garrett, he can coach Thibodeau along. Maybe that's the top 5 pick you took a couple of years ago. You get a little bit more play out of him. You have 2 elite edge rushers that can play next to Myles Garrett.
But if he's not,
you already have Brian Burns.
Yeah, but if he does, I mean, if his goal is to win a Super Bowl, then
I think the Giants are pretty close.
You can't think that. The Giants are
this
close.
is not a conversation I wanted to have in February.
The Giants are close.
Yeah, I love Neighbors. I love Tyrone Tracy. I love a lot of the pieces on their defense.
Oh,
love
the Giants are close.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good.
Oh, my God.
I think they have a top 10 receiver in football.
They do. I mean, they do, but it's like they're missing a big one.
Yeah, you get a quarterback.
Who's the quarterback?
Arch Manning in 2 years.
All right.
Could the Bears be? I think it's the NFC. By the way, if Myles Garrett gets traded, I think it's the NFC.
I'm looking at a Browns thing, or is that a just teams that need him thing?
I'm looking at the AFC. I just don't see a team. I mean, I could see Houston maybe just because CJ, but they're heading into year 3 with CJ. I'm just trying to look at teams. I mean, the Raiders.
Your guy Everett Henry with a phenomenal point in the chat. He says, my guess is the Seahawks. I think that's a really good guess. Mike McDonald's needed that dominant guy. He drafted Byron Murphy high last year.
Man.
If he wants to build that D lineup, right, yeah, if he just wants to focus on defense, he's a defensive guy. I think the Seattle would make a lot of sense. My only worry there is, would they be hesitant to give up a lot of draft picks when you're probably moving on from Geno Smith relatively soon? I don't know if I'm trading, 2 firsts plus into 4 years into the future or whatever, when I'm going to have to make a quarterback change in 2 years. I just don't know how eager I would be to do that. Also losing Tyler Lockett this year, a lot of shakeup happening in Seattle, but that's a good one to throw out there.
Yeah, and I'm looking at like the draft order right now. Look, the last time Cleveland took a quarterback in the first round was Baker Mayfield, okay? And they picked Denzel Ward in the top 5 as well. They had 2 picks in the top 5, and that worked out pretty well. If they could get the Giants to jump on that. But by the way, the Patriots with Vrabel, can you imagine Vrabel's defense?
What if the Eagles just go get him? I mean,
that would stink.
I heard the Dodgers are on line 1. I hope the Dodgers let everyone else play.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, no. So over the weekend, the NBA, Luka being traded to the Lakers, and Luka and LeBron. That's pretty wild. That's an interesting tandem in Los Angeles. Pretty cool. And then Anthony Davis going to Dallas. I think. By the way, I kind of like Anthony Davis in Dallas. I kind of like him with Klay Thompson and Kyrie Irving. I'm not saying that's a big picture, long-term success thing there that you give up Luka for, but we'll talk about that more in a moment. But that trade from over the weekend came literally out of nowhere. That's all anybody was talking about. I don't know the last time that the NBA was front and center of conversations across all sports and across all shows and across anything. It's pretty. You had NBA head coaches in their press conferences and post games saying, "Don't even ask me about the trade. I don't care." They're tired of everyone talking about it. The NBA, this is the best thing that's happened to them in a while. But it took maybe one of the wildest, weirdest, worst trades in NBA history. Where are we at with this Luka to Lakers trade before we get to the most shocking trades that our teams have ever pulled off?
Jacob and I were talking about it before the show, and I think we're pretty close somewhere we think.
Yeah.
I think Jacob maybe is a little bit different than myself, but pretty close. If you're looking at it just this year, just this season alone, then I don't think it's a bad trade for the Mavericks. If you're looking at it as a Mavericks fan who just bought a Luka jersey last year, who just watched him play for a finals last season, and you're like, this is the face of our franchise for the next 15 seasons, then you're upset.
Did you see the protests?
And you should. Oh yeah, I saw the coffin.
They lost 700,000 Instagram followers after the trade.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Did they? So the first game they play at home. I don't know when that'll be. I imagine they're just going to be booing the entire game. There's nobody that wants Anthony Davis, and that's probably honest. That was the funniest part of this whole thing, is that Anthony Davis just got every stray imaginable, every ricochet shot.
I like Anthony Davis.
It was just Anthony Davis. Yeah. This guy's old, and he's injured a lot, and he stinks. So I do feel a little bit bad for him, but it's a bad trade because you're trading your franchise away for this year, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. Like if Luka was, I know it has. I think he's been hurt this year, so
he hasn't played since Christmas.
I get all of that, but if you're looking for the longevity of your franchise, there's no way you can rationalize this move.
But Luka got fat.
He got fat, but I'd take fat Luka over injury-prone Anthony.
Ryan Russillo said it best. He could be smoking a cigarette, bringing the ball up the court, and I would have the Supermax contract in his locker after the game. It doesn't matter. We've seen him be great.
Here's you know what's funny about this trade. I've made it my point to say I would trade Ellie. I would trade every single player we had for a championship. I don't know if I would have traded Luka. I don't know if I would have traded Luka for a ring. Like they have to win a championship, or this is the worst trade ever made. They have to. If they do not win a championship with Anthony Davis, it is the worst trade in the history of the league. And I also don't fully understand how they're even allowing this, given the fact that they vetoed the Chris Paul to the Lakers with Kobe.
Well, because Adam Silver's weak and doesn't care.
That could be it too.
David Stern's a man and the best commissioner of all time.
I guess. Like this is absurd. This is absolutely absurd for both franchises. Good for the Lakers. You got now legitimately the face of your franchise for the next 15 years for essentially nothing. I mean, it wasn't working with Anthony Davis and LeBron. It wasn't.
Right.
They won a championship in COVID. Whether or not you want to call that a Mickey Mouse ring, that's up to you.
Hardest ring ever.
The hardest ring ever. That's up to you. But in the real format of the NBA, it has not worked. It has not worked. So now you're trading away Anthony Davis for a generational face of the league superstar, essentially for not. I mean, they gave up 1 first-round pick.
They only had 2.
They gave up 1 first-round pick.
Yeah, the fact that the Lakers were able to get Luka without giving up Dalton Knecht, Austin Reeves, or one of their 2 first-round picks is mind-blowing. Doesn't make any sense. Now, I don't think the return is as bad as everyone is making it out to be. We're acting like Anthony Davis is Anderson Varejao. Anthony Davis is a first-ballot Hall of Famer. No disrespect to Anthony Varejao, but like
Anderson Varejao.
But Anthony Davis is very, very good. He's a very good player, one of the best defensive players in all of basketball. The Mavericks have 2 centers, and Derek Lively and I forget his last name now. He's number 22. But great young centers. He'll be able to play the 4, which is what he wanted to play in L.A., and it didn't really work out because they needed him to play the 5. I think it's a decent trade for the Mavericks. I think they're much better this year. I don't know about much better, but I think they're better equipped this year to win a championship than they were before the trade.
Yeah.
Now, if you go 6 months into the future beyond that, they're definitely not. Luka's 25. He's going to be playing for a long time. They had the Supermax thing lined up for him to sign this offseason, $315 million or whatever that number is, to stay in Dallas long term. I think the craziest part of all this isn't Luka for Anthony Davis. It's not any kind of trade here. It's the fact that the GM didn't call anybody.
No.
If you're going to market your top player, put your top player on the trade market, a top 5 player in the entire league, and you've seen what people have gotten for Kevin Durant in terms of the Nets, what the Thunder got for Paul George when they shipped him to the Clippers. All these teams getting massive, massive hauls, and you have one of those guys, maybe someone better than all those guys. I mean, Luka, I said it earlier in the show, if we talked about untouchables in the NBA last week, Luka would have been, if not the first name we said, the second or third name we said.
Yeah.
He was no doubt in anyone's mind untouchable to be moved. And then the Mavericks shop him? And they shop him with the intention of only getting one guy back. They were so locked in on Anthony Davis that they didn't call any of the other 29 teams to have a trade for Luka Dončić. That just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why, as a GM, you would make that. If you fall in love with Anthony Davis, that's fine. But you still have to spin the tires elsewhere, right? And the fact that Rob Pelinka, the Lakers GM, had to do I'll think over it for 3 days. We've all done that. Someone gives you an offer that's way too good. You can't jump on it right away. You let it sit in your fantasy football hub for 24 hours or something. Well, he couldn't jump on it right away because they thought he was kidding.
Well, I imagine it's like there's got to be something else. Is there some story that's going to come out about him? What is going on to where I'm being offered this generational Christmas present? What's going on behind the scenes? And I still don't fully understand. There had to have been something very, very wrong with the relationship between...
He had to have been really fat.
Do you think that's all it was? He was just fat? Because if he was just fat, you just say this offseason, Luka, we just need you to drop 20.
Well, he wouldn't go. They had conditioning programs for him, and he
wouldn't go. I don't know. I have a hard time imagining they're just trading away one of the faces of the league for being 20 pounds overweight.
A lot of people are calling for collusion.
That could be it too. And again, this trade should not have been allowed. I mean, it just shouldn't have been allowed.
I don't think it's that crazy. I don't
I
think
think it's
there's
pretty
any
crazy.
way that it should have been vetoed.
I think it's crazy because of what you just said. The fact that he offered nothing to anybody else. He's just like at midnight on a cold midnight. He's just like, "Hey Lakers, here you go." Nobody else. That's weird to me. That's weird.
Hey Rob Pelinka, I want Anthony Davis. Rob Pelinka, we're not trading Anthony Davis. Mavs GM. What about for Luka? Rob Pelinka. Well, one time you want Anthony Davis. I think that's pretty much how it went. And the other thing I wanted to touch on just before we went into the our own crazy trades, you said it's the worst trade in NBA history. I don't think it's the worst trade of the last 5 years. I think the Paul George trade's way worse.
Paul George.
You traded Paul George.
That one's bad.
For Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's an MVP candidate year in and year out. Jalen Williams, who's also an all-star. And 4 first-round picks.
But Luka's better than both of those guys.
But Luka's one guy. That's what I'm saying. You got 2 all-stars.
I know, but it's like it doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes no sense.
It just doesn't. If they don't win a championship, there's no rational thinking behind keeping that GM. I don't know what that guy's name is.
They extended in this offseason.
Yeah, that's it's just a clown move. I mean, it's a clown. He's a clown.
So, Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverley, Leandro Bolmaro, all right, Jared Vanderbilt, 4 first-round picks and a 2026 pick swap. That was the trade that got Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert got 4 first-round picks in return, and you got 1 first-rounder back for Luka. I will say this. I have a different take than most people. Luka's attitude sucks. The fact that he ignored team conditioning drill, he was not his relationship with that organization was not very good. The fact that he's not in shape, I know we want to blow all that stuff off, but that's kind of a problem when you're an organization that's about to invest over $300-400+ million into a player.
And you have to
imagine what we love and what you guys love so much about Joe Burrow is just the leadership that he brings to the table, all the work that he puts in. No one, even the haters of the Bengals, can't say, man, the Bengals wasted money on paying Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow checks off every single tiny box. There's not one doubt in anyone's mind that he was worth every penny. There was a lot of doubts whether Luka was worth that Supermax coming up. I actually can appreciate an organization saying you're going to get paid a lot of money, but we're not going to be the ones to do it. In the finals last year, the attitude that he had, for one, he led them to the finals, so there's that. But the attitude that he had throughout the finals, he refused to play defense. They said he wouldn't accept coaching on anything. You couldn't tell him anything. You had the, Brian Windhorst, that just went scorched earth on him in the post game, and he's just an insider. He's not an opinion giver like Stephen A. Smith. There was a lot of noise going on. I can appreciate an organization telling a superstar athlete they always think they walk on water, that, you know what, you do need to do what's asked of you at least one time, because you can't just do whatever you want at all the time and still get everything that you want coming to you. I still think the Mavericks made a very dumb trade. I don't think they handled that at all. I would have been fine with them trading him if they would have said, he's not in condition, he doesn't show up to workouts, he has a bad attitude, all of this, we're going to get the best trade possible. Cool, do that. But what they're doing here is just ridiculous, basically just giving them away. But kudos to the Mavericks, because if you go read a lot of the reports on Luka, horrible attitude, all of these things that I would not want my team to dish out that kind of money to a red flag athlete like that. Joe Burrow deserved that money because not only is he great on the field like Luka is on the court, but Burrow is as good off the field and in the locker room. Luka doesn't check those boxes. That's why I'm okay with the Mavericks moving on. I do have a problem, though, with the trade as far as what the way they went about it.
You just got to make more calls. You
have to.
I seriously 100% agree with Justin. I have no problem with them trading Luka if they don't want to give him a Supermax contract. That's a lot of money, and it's something that can handcuff a lot of organizations. That they didn't feel comfortable giving him $315 million, go get 13 first-round picks.
I was going to
that's the thing, is everyone's killing them for trading Luka. You can't trade Luka. You can't trade Luka. I don't agree with that. I think everyone is tradable. You just have to get the right package, and they didn't even try.
They didn't even try. They went for a one and done. They're trying to win a championship this year. They traded their franchise away for one half of a season. That's what they've done here, and that's what makes it the worst trade ever. I agree with both of you. But here's my issue with what Justin said. Like, sports divas are a thing. Like, there have been divas in the NBA and the NFL. Every single MLB, Major League Baseball's had divas. Every league has guys who don't listen to what the franchise wants, the core values of the franchise, the organization. But my thing is, if you're good enough to overcome that, Luka averages 28, 9, and 8 for his career.
Yeah.
Like, I don't give a damn if he's eating McDonald's mid layup line. I don't care.
Mark Cuban would have never done this.
No, that's the other thing. I wonder what Mark Cuban's doing right now, because that's insane.
Well, he's getting a divorce lawyer.
Is he? I mean, that's
he said a couple of years ago, if they ever trade Luka, he had to pick between his wife and Luka, he'd get a divorce lawyer.
It's brutal. I mean, it's straight up brutal. It's a terrible trade, and good luck to the Mavericks organization, because there's no way, if I was a fan of that team, no chance I'd ever go back. No chance.
5-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, Rookie of the Year, scoring champ, All-Rookie team, and Western Conference Finals MVP. Is that enough to have the sevens in the rafters in Dallas? I think it's close. I think it's really close, which is crazy to say that Luka might be one of the few with their jersey retired in Dallas, and they just ship him off.
So
they did put out a very cool highlight video montage thanking Luka.
Brutal.
About 30 minutes ago.
They shouldn't have done. They shouldn't have done anything.
Hilarious.
They shouldn't have done anything.
LeBron James is 41?
I think he's just
40.
And what he is doing is just so insanely ridiculous at his age. I know, that's why I was laughing. He's just 40. He's
like 40.
The reason what LeBron is doing is so insane is because at his age, you shouldn't be doing what he's doing at his age. But because he took care of his body so much, his body is literally his temple, and he invests so much into it. That's how he's able to do what he's doing on top of just his pure talent. But like, he values his body and how he prepares for, his career. And then you look at Luka, is he giving that same value? You don't have to doubt that LeBron's going to take care of himself and that's going to be worth the investment. I understand that. So earlier when you said divas, I think that there's a difference between being a diva and being disobedient. And I don't think divas are disobedient. I think OBJ, I think Jamar Chase is diva-ish, but he works hard and he shows
Jamar's
up.
absolutely a diva, yeah.
But he's not skipping workouts. Now, that was a hold-in. That's not the same thing. He's not doing things, not taking care of himself and not doing things to make himself better for his team. OBJ was one of the biggest divas out there, but no one ever questioned his work ethic. I think there's a difference between a diva and then what Luka has been with Dallas. And I don't think the trade was so bad that's what's being talked about the most, and repeating myself, obviously, but I'm fine with them moving on from him. I really am at the end of the day. Now, if he turns it around and people said that about Anthony Davis, then Anthony Davis sees how LeBron James takes care of himself. Anthony Davis started changing how his work ethic and how he kind of, stepped foot out on that floor. But people bringing up the Anthony Davis thing never being readily available. Luka, he misses on average about 15 games a season. He's going to miss about 25 games this particular season. And a lot of that's because he doesn't take care of his body. I think it's an investment. And right now, is he worth the investment? Talent-wise, yes. Work ethic, no. Body, no. Yeah. So we'll see.
A Lakers Mavericks Western Conference Finals will feed families, and I will be cheering for the Lakers.
Fun little nugget about this as well is they're going to try to build around Anthony Davis and Kyrie. Kyrie has a player option after this year.
Yeah, Kyrie's gone.
So he's going to be the Lakers' next point guard. Kyrie hit free agency. He picked Luka over LeBron, and LeBron said, "I'll take that. Come on down, I'll take that."
The Lakers desperately need a center. They have
Jackson Hayes. They needed a center with Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Yes. But now, because they have that extra first-round pick, now all of a sudden they can actually go get one. They can go get a legitimate center to put with LeBron and Luka, and I think that's big. That's big. But I think on radio we are out of time, so we didn't get to our biggest trades, but that's fine. We pushed that back to tomorrow's show, which is cool. But Jason Fitz, we'll have a lot to talk about with him tomorrow as well, and we'll get to all of that on tomorrow's portion of the radio side. But that wraps it up for us on radio, 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Appreciate you guys all hanging out. But yeah, Myles Garrett wants out of Cleveland. That's going to be, whatever. We're done here. Until tomorrow, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Oh, yes. I can take these off now.
Yeah. I was telling Casey earlier before we get into baseball talk. I hate when I forget a hat on Kenner Remote Day.
Yeah.
Hate it. Hate wearing the headset without a hat. Absolutely hate it.
It's a bad feeling, and I also like wearing it because you guys know my hair touch thing.
Yeah.
I'm just obsessed with it, so I have to do it. I also like if I've been showering more at night lately, and if I shower at night, my hair's gone for the next day. It's just gone. So I have to put on the hat, and we work from there. So anyway, so Reed's been talking about it in the chat, and I don't give a flying damn about projections. I've never cared, not even a little bit. The only thing you use projections for is if you project something and then at the end of the season you were right. You're like, look, I projected that. Like that's what they're for. There's something called the Pacoda MLB projections.
I find a new MLB projection group every offseason.
Yeah,
they just pop out of the woodwork.
Never heard of this. Don't give a flying F about it. But
a rat's beehive.
A rat's beehive about it. And so this is what they are. The Chicago Cubs are projected to go 91-71. Brewers 80-82. Cardinals 79-83. Pirates 75-87. Cincinnati Reds are somehow projected to finish worse than they did last year, 74-89. With every addition that we've had. So.
Also allow about 115 more runs than last year.
Yeah, they expect the pitching staff to be the worst of all time.
The worst in baseball.
I just don't like. There's not a projection on this planet that's going to prevent me from believing. Like, if I don't believe in something, it's because of what my own eyes are telling me, because of what they did last year, because of what they did this offseason. They've done enough to improve the team. I'm not saying they're a playoff team. But to say that they're going to win 73 games this season right now is crazy to me. There's nobody that's injured yet. They've updated improved the roster, upgraded every single position pretty much except for the outfield. And I do think that they're better than they are at the end of last year. They're better today than they were at the end of last year.
I don't know how you could argue the opposite.
I don't know.
Especially those last few months last year where we didn't have able-bodied pitchers.
Yeah.
And then the month in the middle of the season was May, where we won a game.
Yeah.
Like, you take those 2 months out, you even get average for those 2 months, 3 months, whatever it was.
Correct.
You're all of a sudden, fighting for a spot. Those numbers also on those, what is it, you said Pacoda?
Pacoda.
Those numbers on the Pacoda projections, very far off of sports books.
Not even remotely close. So I don't.
They had the Cubs at over 90 wins.
Yeah, 91 wins, which is third best in Major League Baseball.
DraftKings has 84.5 as their line.
Yeah,
like that's almost 10 wins.
I don't like. This is where like the analytics stuff. This is where you lose me completely. I'm gonna watch this Reds team, and if by mid June and everybody's hurt, then we'll start talking about it. But what are we saying that the Reds have gone down significantly? That's not what anybody has said anywhere. National media, local media, there is not one person.
I think the only people that have said the Reds haven't gotten a ton better is local media.
Maybe. And
everyone else is like they have the best offseason in baseball.
And it's like I saw Evan, shout out to our good friend Evan, who tweeted at me, well, you don't understand projections. But you're also the guy that uses them to say the Reds are good. So what are we talking about? Like, it's like I think that the Reds are a fine baseball team this year. They're going to be competitive. I'm not saying they're World Series champs, but they're going to be fine. There's no way that you can actually predict the Cincinnati Reds have gotten that bad this offseason. There's nobody with a brain that thinks that. So don't come at me and say I don't know how to read projections when you're going to use projections to say the complete opposite of what that projection's telling me. So it's just a whole bunch of bull. And to be quite honest, this is absolutely nonsense to me. Everybody who buys into whatever I keep trying to say the F word. I'm not going to say it today. Whoever's buying into whatever those projections are saying, I wish you well on your quest, because those are so far off.
Usually,
I'd venture to say every single one of those projections are off by at least 8 games.
Okay.
8 games.
I like
every
that.
single one.
I like that.
Maybe except for the Pirates.
I'm
Pirates
usually
would
the
be
guy
right around
trying
there.
to tell you
I think they nailed the Pirates.
stats or whatever else that you don't
Yeah.
care about that I see and find or whatever. Could not possibly care less about projections.
I think they're so stupid.
Why are there 40 of them?
Yeah, there should be one projection.
Or none.
Or none.
Who cares?
One projection.
Let's just do projections for the MLB like we do projections for the NFL. Let's have a couple
Correct.
guys sit down and write W's and L's on a piece of paper.
Yeah, it's like...
And then we'll say a number. Like, you don't know how these guys are going to play.
Projections are great for sports talk. It's great for me and you to fill up time on a Monday morning when the football season's over. That's what projections are for.
And we appreciate them.
And yeah, like that's when we can get excited. But don't sit here and tell me that projections, you can use projections to do the right to find answers. They're projections. They're nothing.
Yeah, I just opened Twitter. We have Zips projections for the top 10 players for this upcoming season. That's fun.
Who we got in there?
Shohei at 1. Shocker.
Whoa, really?
Aaron Judge at 2.
Oh,
Love me some projections.
It's just nonsense. So I listen. I'm not saying that the Reds are going to be some world-beating team, but give me a break. Outside of that, any other news? Any other news that just came out? Because I feel like there was a lot of breaking news just then that just spit out at us.
It was a busy last hour and a half.
The Bearcats. We never got to it, but the Bearcats players, the former players, they keep tweeting at pretty much like not tweeting at anybody like angrily, but they're all coming out of the woodwork saying, well, this team needs to be better. They need to play harder. Under Mick Cronin, they used to fight, and then you have like guys like John Newman who are saying, why are we yelling at everybody? Wes Miller's giving this program his all. Maybe I'm biased. If you look at this season as a Bearcats fan, and you take a look at the roster that's been put out on there, and you see how every single player has regressed, every single one. Aziz, our 7-foot center, at halftime yesterday had 0.0 rebounds. Do you know how hard it is to not luck into a rebound? If I sat at half court, I would get one rebound in 20 minutes of basketball. Some ball would bounce my way. And the fact that it doesn't happen with this Bearcats team is utterly disgraceful. I don't know if there's going to be a point where we fire him this year because of the buyout, but I'd have to imagine if you lose out, which is a very real possibility. I don't see the Bearcats winning too many games going forward. If you lose out, you might have to. There's
a point where push comes to shove, and it's just we can't let this bottom out.
You can't.
You can't let it bottom out.
You can't lose everything. So it's whatever. John Cunningham, Scott Satterfield, and Wes Miller. Congratulations to all three of you.
Power rank the 3.
John Cunningham's in dead last. Satterfield's in first.
Yeah, I think so.
And Wes is in second.
We do have some Browns updates. I wish Kinner was here to share them.
Okay, here we go.
Adam Schefter tweeted 15 minutes ago that Browns GM Andrew Berry is reportedly maintaining that they will not trade Myles Garrett.
Whoa. All right.
The nugget that makes that make a little bit more sense, obviously we're talking about, do they just tear it down? Does it make sense for them to trade him? It would be a dumb move to hold on to him if he wants out.
Yeah.
They take on $40 million in dead cap if they trade him.
Why?
Because he's restructured his contract to make the Deshaun money work time and time
Really?
again so that they can roll it down and roll it down and roll it down, and eventually when those players want to be moved, that doesn't work anymore.
Is there a post-June
That would only be
trade?
for cuts.
Okay.
Right?
I don't know.
I think that only has cap swings for cuts, but I could be wrong.
Because I was looking at it on the capulator or whatever on this website here, and it had that option to trade him post June.
Oh, maybe. I thought that only applied to cuts, but maybe some contracts have that.
But I don't know why it's like that or how that.
It has something to do with the league calendar and where the league year flips and how many weeks that is post league year and draft and stuff. So I don't know entirely how it works.
I mean,
I
that would
enough
be
that I just don't ask questions.
That'd be post free agency and the draft.
Right.
So you would be like really banking on your team to be able to.
You would also be locking yourself into 2-3 destinations instead of 16.
Right.
Like when a team that needs an edge rusher uses their 5th overall pick on an edge rusher, they're all of a sudden not trading 2 1s for Myles Garrett. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So they have to move him before the draft if they're going to move him. I also saw Daniel Jeremiah putting out that if he was in charge of the Browns, just kind of what we were talking about at that last segment, he would trade Myles Garrett for as much as he could in the 26th draft. Get basically 0 assets this year. And just do basically double up in 26 and 27. Because he said with Deshaun in the books this year and Hurt already, you're not going to be able to win no matter who you get. So who cares? You get more value in 26 and 7.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting point. This will be weird to watch because I don't think they're just going to pick up the phone and move him. I think this is going to get pretty ugly.
But do you think he sits out?
He could.
You think he would
Not,
do that?
He's
not with 2 years on his deal. He can't. If he had 1 year on his deal, maybe. You can't. There's no way you can eat that much money if you're Myles Garrett. You just can't.
How much has he been paid up to this point? Anyone know?
That's what I was pulling up.
Almost to prove a point, though, you'd have to.
I know.
Like almost, and it would, and the Browns can't possibly. And I know they're the
Myles
Cleveland
Garrett's
Browns.
a minority owner of the Cavs.
Is he really?
You know how much you have to do to get a guy like that to request out of your city?
That's and like the Browns can't take any more bad PR. They can't. I mean, they have more bad PR than any NFL franchise out there. And this to have your generational players sit out and make it a point that he wants out of your city so bad, like they can't afford that. I think Myles Garrett holds the cards here.
Myles Garrett's numbers are the same pre and post June 1st, Casey.
Okay. So
It's the same $37 million.
Okay. I'm seeing here that his career earnings are $125 million.
Yeah.
Because I guess that was the guarantees that he was.
Yeah, $124,728,901. Myles Garrett's career earnings.
So, I don't know. Maybe he does sit and eat it. Because
Okay, if he sits for 2 years, that goes to 80. He gets fined $40 million.
I don't know. That's a tough decision. But
I don't. Again, I truly believe that the Browns would be forced to trade him.
I agree. I agree.
So if you sit out a couple weeks and then you're gone, that might
also
be what it takes.
okay.
appreciating
What's the
asset
Myles
for them,
Garrett
too. Like-
Luka trade comp?
You mean
The Browns trading Myles Garrett. Well, I guess it would be someone trading for Myles Garrett because he's a little bit older. Is it Dallas? Is it the Cowboys trading Micah?
How old's Micah now?
Young, 24? 24?
Was that it?
25?
So
Are
we're
you
looking.
serious? That's how young he is?
I think
So we're looking for the.
25.
We're looking for the Dončić here in this
I
scenario.
think,
or are we looking
right?
for
Because
the?
Myles Garrett would be the Anthony Davis.
Okay.
Is it Jamar?
It would be.
I think it might be. It might be Jamar.
Maybe, but I think Myles Garrett's a little bit different than Anthony Davis. I think Myles Garrett is regarded a little bit higher than Anthony Davis is.
Which was the most shocking point of all this trade.
True.
Why do people
I'm
all
not
of a sudden
saying,
hate Anthony Davis?
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong on that.
He's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, like I'm not debating that. But I do think like a 31-year-old guy, injury prone, Myles Garrett, generational talent, superstar, defensive player of the year.
See, I think quarterbacks. That's why I thought we were going to talk about it today. But that's why I thought the Schefter Lamar for Joe Burrow trade comp, though for other reasons it was terrible.
Yeah.
I think quarterback in the NFL is so drastically different than any one position in any other sport that you just can't even comp it.
Okay. So.
Like we were talking about this the other day. It was like Jamar in baseball is like a star shortstop. Joe Burrow in baseball is Shohei Ohtani. Like a Patrick Mahomes in baseball is Shohei Ohtani. They're your best pitcher and your best hitter.
Yeah.
So like it's just I don't think a quarterback can comp at all. I don't know. I also think it's weird that everyone's trying to do position to position when Dončić is a guard and Anthony Davis is a center. Yeah. Like would it be trading T for Khalil Mack this offseason?
Honest to God, I think like the comparison I had in my brain, and I know this is going to be disrespectful to our boy Anthony Davis.
Why are you doing this?
It's like trading Joe Burrow for Russell Wilson in a second. And that's how bad of a trade I think that was in my mind.
Nick Wright said it's like Josh Allen gained 30 pounds after this AFC championship and they shipped him off for Stafford.
Yeah, that's a good one. Like that's it's because it just doesn't make any sort of sense. But
it couldn't have just been fat, right?
It had to be. He had to have upset that GM. Probably because that guy's a loser.
Maybe I'm tinfoil hat man.
Respectfully.
Maybe I'm too conspiracy theory guy with sports and everything.
Yeah.
Luka's farewell letter didn't address the Dallas organization at all.
He shouldn't have.
Then are you sure he was going to sign a Supermax?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he would have. I think if things were all, sunshine and rainbows between him and that organization, I think you thank the organization on your way out. At least Jake Kidd, at least some players.
No way you do, because nobody knew what was happening.
But that's what I mean. You don't thank the GM.
Well,
you played for a coach for 5 years.
No, you don't thank the Dallas because that was your home. You were going to be there for 20 years, and now you're just gone in the middle of the night.
I thought that was bizarre.
Also, how funny would it be if he went to Denver?
Yeah,
he doesn't sign with the Lakers. He goes to Denver, and it just is. It's just the most outrageous team ever. Yeah. So
that is going to be an interesting point when he hits free agency, because he won't be eligible for Supermax anymore. So the Lakers don't have the ability to give him some kind of massive extension.
That's why he's probably mad too. He doesn't get money. So.
They cost him $118 million, that trade.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just absolutely insane. Wouldn't Shohei be a two-way NFL player? Aaron Judge would be the Burrow, Mahomes, or Allen?
No, Mr. Mo. I completely disagree. I think Aaron Judge can't affect a game nearly as much as a star quarterback can. I think the only person that can affect a game as much as a star quarterback would be a two-way player like a Shohei Ohtani. And it has to be as good as Shohei Ohtani. I think Travis Hunter, playing corner and wide receiver, will have less impact on winning games than a star quarterback. I don't even know that that's that hot of a take. I don't know.
But that's it.
We'll box it up here in a bit.
We'll box it up here in a couple minutes. Give us a few minutes, and we'll talk some more. Grammys. Big Grammys last night. What a terrible award show that is. I watched it for about 3 seconds.
I watched the red carpet. Kanye's wife. Round of applause.
Round of applause to Kanye's wife. All right. That's it. Everybody have a pleasant Monday. We'll be with you for Box Lunch here in a bit.